How did the US-Iran war rewrite the Gulf regional order, and why the next moves by Washington, Tehran, and their neighbors will define Gulf power for a generation? The United States entered this war with overwhelming firepower and a plan for a quick, decisive outcome. What it got instead was a war of attrition, and a war it could not sustain. On this channel, we flagged this early. It was clear from the opening weeks that the US did not have the industrial base or stockpiles for a protracted war against Iran. The numbers now confirm it. Within the first 16 days, the US expended more than 6,000 munitions. Independent analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies found that by the initial ceasefire, America had burned through up to 61% of its Patriot interceptor stockpiles, 52 to 80% of THAAD interceptors, 40 to 70% of precision strike missiles and ATACMS, and roughly 30% of its Tomahawk cruise missiles, a depletion rate unseen since the 2003 Iraq invasion. This matters significantly. Patriot production runs at only about 20 units a month, while THAAD deliveries aren't expected to resume meaningfully this year. Full restoration of the US missile stockpile could take 3 to 5 years, competing with allies like Ukraine and Taiwan for the same production lines. This is why Washington seems to be preferring, again, a low-cost naval blockade to sustained bombing. Not a change in ambition, but a change forced by arithmetics. The numbers said attrition favors Tehran. Washington's options remain narrow: resume airstrikes and further deplete irreplaceable reserves, maintain the blockade, which is sustainable but doesn't eliminate the threat, or negotiate a settlement that looks like retreat, confirming to every rival that a mid-sized state can outlast a superpower once it runs out of tools to finish the job. Iran's options are simpler. It doesn't need to win conventionally, only survive, absorb losses, and prove it can impose costs indefinitely. Every week without American victory is an Iranian victory by default, and we now understand exactly why that bet on endurance was correct. Iran's geopolitical weight has shifted accordingly. Its power once rested on nuclear ambiguity and militia networks. Today, it rests on something more tangible: the demonstrated ability to threaten the Strait of Hormuz and, through the Houthis, Bab el-Mandeb and the Red Sea as well. Iran has converted geography into deterrence. It only needs to make the global economy flinch at a moment where America's missiles defenses are stretched to a multi-year breaking point. This is why Iran's deterrence works best not through direct confrontation, but through calibrated choke point disruption combined with a steady drumbeat of drone and missile strikes that a stockpile depleted US is increasingly ill-equipped to intercept at volume. These attacks aren't meant to be decisive. They are meant to be persistent and cheap for Iran, expensive for America, exactly when US defenses are running dry. But this also carries a risk. If Tehran pushes Gulf Arab states, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in premise, from neutrality into belligerency, as we should not forget that Iran's retaliation generally targets US bases but on the soil of its Arab neighbors, the picture changes dramatically. Direct attacks on their oil infrastructure could open their bases and arsenals to Washington, turning a constrained US-Iran war into a resource-rich coalition that Iran can sustain with much more difficulty. Two other actors shape this from its margins. Israel sought not just to degrade Iran's missile and nuclear capacity, but to trigger regime collapse, a goal quietly redefined after failing to materialize and even repeated visits by Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu to his once close friend Trump do not seem to help. Turkey, meanwhile, plays the opposite role, the indispensable back channel between Washington and Tehran, benefiting from a war it does not want to see spread, while quietly expanding its own regional influence as the illusion of both American and Iranian invincibility erodes. Now, widen the lens further, because this war is no longer contained within the Middle East. Ukraine has become an unexpected participant. Kyiv's expertise in drone interception, refined over years of defending against Russian and Iranian-designed drones, is quietly informing how Gulf states and the United States adapt their own air defenses against the same Iranian drone technology now hitting them in the Gulf, a technological cross-pollination born of the Russia-Ukraine war. But the connection has become far more dangerous recently. An incident in which Ukrainian forces struck an Iranian-linked vessel in the Caspian Sea threatens to fuse two separate wars into one. Iran has supplied drones to Russia throughout the Ukraine war. If Ukraine now threats the Iranian assets as legitimate targets wherever reachable, Tehran faces a dilemma: absorb the strike and appear weak on another front, or retaliate and risk direct hostilities with a state backed by NATO's broader security architecture. For Moscow, this is opportunity. A distracted, stockpile depleted United States is a Russia with more room to maneuver in Ukraine, and that is why Ukraine's attack on the Iranian ship might not have been a mistake. Appearing in the Iranian theater, Ukraine might be trying to draw more attention from Washington. So, where does this leave us? The United States retain superior firepower on paper, but its interceptor stockpiles, down by as much as 80% in some categories, with multi-year rebuild times, mean it cannot sustain the tempo of war that it started. Iran retains inferior firepower, but has found leverage that neutralizes much of their advantage: maritime chokepoint disruption and relentless, low-cost attrition against an opponent that is, quite literally, running out of missiles to stop it. The outcome will not be decided by who strikes hardest. It will be decided by who miscalculates first. Whether that is Iran overreaching into Gulf Arab territory, Israel forcing or trying to force a wider war, or a stray strike in the Caspian Sea pulling two separate conflicts into one. That is the geopolitical reality behind today's headlines. We said from the beginning America lacked the means for this kind of war. It has an army that is the strongest in the world, but this does not mean it is almighty.